Opposites attract. So the saying goes. When Melissa and I first met, she was an intensely jealous character. And I was someone who had made YouTube videos talking about the extent to which I did not experience jealousy. It was always a kind of oddity about me. And it came out in the workplace. It came out in the contrast between me and some of my blood relations in the family. That really jealousy was something I understood kind of philosophically and in the abstract, but that I really did not feel and did not experience. Neither in terms of romance, nor in terms of like owning expensive things, nor in terms of intellectual accomplishments. I really didn't experience it. And Melissa, partly due to nurture and partly due to nature, was really a tremendously jealous character at the time we first met, when we first got together. You had one grandmother who is famous within your own family for having been unbelievably jealous, intensely jealous, and it really tore her life apart, and to some extent tore the whole family's life apart. So to give just one anecdote, she was such a jealous and possessive character. She would tear up the Sears catalog. She would tear up catalogs and advertisements for clothes that came through the mail. Any image of a woman, of any other woman, like even if it's just an advertisement for pajamas or whatever, she wouldn't let her husband see that.
No, I gotta correct you. It was just the intimates, the bras and panties.
Oh, okay. So she went through and tore out certain types of pajamas, not others. Yeah. Okay. So he was allowed to read some pages of the catalog. That's interesting. I thought she told me she wouldn't let him watch TV. Right? She didn't
allow TV in the household
because there were too many beautiful women on TV.
Yeah, it's the boob tube.
But still, that she wasn't as selective. It wasn't just some channels or something, but any TV at all. All right. So my point is, whether it was genetic or whether it's something that resulted from Melissa's upbringing in teenage years.
Well, that's partly why I wanted to make this video, because I don't think it's genetic. I think it has to do with definitely your environment and what you're shown growing up.
So that's your perspective changed. We once met up with like two of your aunts. Maybe one was an aunt and one was a cousin. We met up with some of your relatives, and they really said, "Look, this is something that runs in the family." And they look. They could be wrong. I'm not saying that's this, but that was interesting that I met people felt that was. Yeah.
But at the same time, you can say that maybe it was due to like her upbringing, right. And then her son, who's my uncle, he also has dealt with pretty intense jealousy problems in his life, and it destroyed his first marriage.
But look, I also don't know. I've talked about that too. To what extent it's nurture versus nature of philosophy. But like, let's say I've worked on Chinese for 5 years. I don't actually know how long I've been studying Chinese. I'd really have to sit and figure it out. But when I get to 5 years, if I meet someone who speaks Chinese way better than I do after 5 years, I don't feel jealousy in those situations. And sorry, I've worked on other languages like Laotian and Thai and stuff. I really don't feel that way. And when I go to the gym and I see someone who lifts more weight than me, I don't. In any of these contexts, I really don't feel jealousy. On the contrary, I often feel an awareness of like, ooh, that guy worked really hard. I don't want to do the hard work that guy did. Or even with money, a lot of the time, I look, okay, say someone who's become a lawyer or someone who's become a surgeon. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do those years in law school. I've thought about it. You know what I mean? Like I tend to really have that awareness, but I don't know if that's, something I've really chosen, if it's a result of some philosophy or if that's just who I am, that I was kind of born in this way of really not feeling jealousy. Okay. Yeah. So let's hear it. This is the very end of 2019. This is December 2019. And you were just mentioning the last video we recorded on this was about 10 months ago. It wasn't quite 1 full year ago. It was a very emotional video, and that's yet to be shared with the public as of today, but probably today we'll finally post that publicly, the last discussion we had. And Senator's here, so you really feel your perspective on this has changed, yeah?
Yeah, so last week you mentioned that we hadn't published that last video. So we went back and we listened to it, and it was pretty emotional for me, like looking back on it. And, you asked if you could publish it, and I said what I would like to do is maybe publish it, but at the same time, in the video that is published, I want my perspective now to maybe do like a before and after, just like how I've worked through it. And during these 10 months, I've really been struggling with acne, so that is a huge change, and I've been separated from you. We were together 24 hours a day for like 2.5 years. Right. And then I went back to live with my parents in Michigan. So I've been separated from you for, I don't know, about 6 months. Right. And now we're going to be continued.
I just want to note the acne, so right now you're about 3 months into 6 months of treatment for the acne with Accutane, but the acne was a really extreme transformation for you. We talked about this early in the relationship. We talked about, I don't even remember the context of this coming out, but we used to talk about the extent to which you had pretty face privilege, that, we were living in China and there were kind of all these things being done for her, all these jobs being offered to her just because she had a pretty face. Guys, believe me, that's not my imagination. Really, literally, like recruiters walking up to her on the sidewalk and saying, hey, we want to hire you, just on the basis of her pretty face, So that was really an extreme transformation, because then living in Taiwan with this extreme acne, because 3 months ago, 6 months ago, the acne was really, really extreme. And people reacted to you not even like you were dying of cancer. They reacted as if you were dying of the plague, like some kind of plague. They were afraid they were going to get. People were really, really taken aback, which is different, because like Americans don't feel that way about acne. I think when you're in the States, it's a person with acne. It's just not that big a deal. So that was definitely transformation in your perspective. So yeah.
Yeah, and it allowed me time to myself, like time to actually be separated from you. And during that time, you again dumped me. So, I had the experience of being like really alone. And, I am going to get kind of personal in this video, but it's just because it's my story and now I'm actually more comfortable with it and I want to share it, because I think it could help other people. And I think if I'm thinking about who the audience is and if anybody else has seen the videos prior, they might want to know like what the update is. Like, have I learned? I mean, one of the titles for the video that you had was "The Cure for Jealousy." Like have I found what the cure for jealousy is?
I'm thinking the title of this video will be "After Jealousy: The Recovery." I think.
Yeah.
Go on, yeah, that'd be nice. All right.
No, that's good. So yeah, it's given me time to actually be alone and realize that like, you gotta be comfortable with yourself alone. And you can't rely on other people. I remember seeing some comments on some of the videos that you posted saying that like I had issues with codependency. And I don't know. I mean, this has given me time.
Dependency. There's a difference between codependency and just dependency, people.
Dependency, yeah.
Codependency means you rely on each other. Dependency is just one person.
Yeah. Right. So, okay. Last week we watched the video back that you want to publish, right. And I said, okay, I want to publish it, but I want to have me reflecting on it. Right. And last night, I got fired up by watching a video of yours, and I was like inspired to finally like, okay, I want to share this. I want to talk about this, but you were sleepy. You were about to go to sleep. So I was like, okay, I'm going to stay up and I'll write this down. So, I have this all written down, but I think I can
hold the mic. Let's do it.
Yeah. So, it was really sad for me to look at that video. Partly because it was seeing how hopeless and how sad I was and how I felt like completely lost at that time, just unable to like it was a problem I felt I couldn't solve, and that was always going to nag at me like for the rest of my life. It just felt like this something I couldn't conquer, this jealousy problem that I had, and it was overwhelming to me, and I could see just how sad I was and how that was affecting you. And I remember from many experiences with you where I was just overwhelmed by emotion, how much that affected you. And so when I watched the video back last week, I just got really sad, and I was thinking about how I handled things so wrong in this relationship, and like me being separated from you these past few months, past like 6 months really, has made me reflect and be like, wow, I really missed my chance, or really dropped the ball in so many situations. So yeah, I'm gonna talk about some real stuff here. It's gonna be real stuff about my life, but I think it's worth sharing. So you've shared anecdotes with me about people from your past, friends that you've had in the past, and I think a phrase that gets repeated, and I find is a common theme of what you tell me about people. You say, you could tell like when he was talking to me that he was fucked up about it. This is just like something that you say, like that's a phrase of yours. So when I think about that, in my experience, you aren't somebody who really does small talk. You're not somebody that if you have a conversation with them, it'll it'll be something that you'll forget, right? I think everybody is going to remember conversations that they have with you because they're very memorable, right? You don't just talk about surface things. You tend to talk about topics that are deep, topics that are maybe touchy, like touchy subjects that people aren't comfortable talking about, like in terms of what's socially acceptable. And I love that about you, you know? I think that's a wonderful aspect of your character, that you're not somebody, you're a real person, you know? You want to deal with real things. And I just think it will lead inevitably to, if people get to know you on a deeper level, that they're going to reveal to you what their insecurities are. Because at some point, like, there's going to be a touchy subject that comes up, and they're going to be like, you know, react in certain ways. So you've shared various anecdotes with me where people are like, you know, you've said that they've reacted in a certain way because they're sensitive about one topic. So, yeah, I mean, it was sad watching this back and seeing how fucked up I was about jealousy and how much this had devastated not only you, you know, but like me. Just, I mean, it really was a problem for me, and it was a problem for you together, for us as a couple, and it really led to a lot of problems in the relationship. So, you know, the topic of jealousy, you know, I used to be like really messed up about talking about it. But I think this is something that, like, I am comfortable with talking about now because I'm able to say, like, I've thought about it and I've come to maybe what I think is the cure for at least my own form of jealousy and, like, my own issues, like, in this relationship. So in this conversation that we had a couple days ago, I was saying that when you get into a relationship with somebody, you find that the person that you're with has had their share of experiences in life, and they have their own kind of formulation of how to treat the other person. And what I said to you is, I think everybody is operating under different definitions of what love is. So as children, as we developed, we kind of see different examples of love. We see love between parents and children. If we're lucky enough, we get to see a functional relationship with our own parents. We see a husband and wife that are functional, but unfortunately, I think a lot of us are not fortunate enough to see a functional, healthy, loving, mutually caring, and respectful relationship when we're growing up. So in these fundamental years, I think a lot of us don't actually get that input, and we see what the relationship is with our parents as some kind of maybe something to avoid or something to idealize, depending on, you know, how you're brought up. And another thing is definitely in our modern age has to do with movies and TV. The inputs that we get from books that we read, romance novels, definitely impacts what we think about what is a normal romantic relationship, what's a normal loving, supportive relationship. So unfortunately, the way that we love and what we grow up with is different for everybody. So to get more personal, I grew up in a conservative Christian household. I grew up with the ideal. The ideal is that you will fall in love, marry, and sleep with one person the rest of your life, right? Like, that is what I was told growing up is the ideal. And looking back, you know, I always kind of thought that it was not reasonable to expect somebody to do that, but that was what I thought was idealized. Like, that was the goal if I could. But everybody's operating by different definitions. So, you know, maybe I grew up in a conservative Christian household, but other people didn't. And maybe I don't even want to grow up with what I was shown. But still, you know, that is a factor to consider. So, human beings, one thing that I've really gathered from watching your YouTube channel, and I think this has had effects on a lot of people that watch your channel who may come from religious backgrounds, is that human beings are not angels in human skin, right? Human beings are animals, and in particular, we are mammals. And, you know, animals have many different motivations, but typically it's the basics are food, shelter, water, and reproduction, right? Mating and reproduction, that's like the biggest thing. So, you know, millions of years of evolution have led to human beings as they are today. They are animals who also have an incredibly strong drive to reproduce. And, when you think about like all the other animals in the animal kingdom, right? How many of them only mate with one other animal?
Yeah.
Right?
There are some.
There are some.
Yeah.
There are some.
But let's pause just a second, because
Yeah.
it is so simple. It's easy to go past. But I mean, you've said to me recently also. So I mean, you grew up in a household where you were told not to believe in the theory of evolution. And again, it's something that's simple, but it's very fundamental and it's very far-reaching consequences. Like, do you think of yourself as an angel trapped in human skin, or do you think of yourself as a kind of bipedal monkey that made up these myths and legends about angels? I mean, it is a very. And then the other thing you've mentioned to me a lot lately in different contexts is the difference you feel, people would have in their lives, but including members of your own family, if they could give up the notion that you suffer in this life and then you're happy, in an afterlife, in a reincarnation in heaven, and something that happens after you die. So just say on this very simple, very broad level, these are not the details of church doctrine, but these broad outlines. I just say lately, in a lot of different contexts, she has been remarking on how different the worldview is. Even though I think you broke away from Christianity many, many years ago, but still the implications of that are something that shapes your life.
Yeah, that's right.
So I mean, there's one thing is really just understanding yourself as a biological creature, simple but deep, and goes a long way. And then there's also a question of what are you going to do with this life when you do really appreciate that it is your only life to work with.
That's right. Yeah, when you're looking at your life in that way, you have one life to live, and only a certain number of years where you're really able to have sexual experiences, right?
Oh yeah. I thought you were going to say a certain number of years in which you could walk. That's actually but that's true. I mean, actually, the number of years that you can walk is larger than the number of years you can have sexual experiences. No, that's really true. Sorry, just really briefly, I have one of my half brothers. I have a million brothers, but I remember one of my half brothers once. He was, one of the differences between us was he was afraid of growing old, and I always said, "What do you mean? Like, I'm really looking forward to being 70 years old, because the stuff I cared about doing, that's when you're in your prime in a lot of ways, when you're in your 70s." But yeah, obviously, if your life revolves around sex, that particular brother of mine, it really does. He's that kind of guy. Then sure, right. No, you're right. It's a much, much smaller number of years. Yeah.
Yeah, especially, if you're a woman and you want to have a child. If you're a man and you want to have a child.
Look, I used to think of myself as a scholar of Buddhism, okay? So guys, I was studying Pali and Sri Lankan and, Burmese and so on. I was working that. I thought of myself being 70 years old and being devoted to that area of philosophy and scholarship. It's a different view of life. But yeah. No, but I mean, for women, it's a very short number of years. But look, for men too, I know how differently women look at me now that I'm above 40, as opposed to how they looked at me when I was in my 20s and my 30s. I know. So even for men, it's more limited than people want to think it is.
Right. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, human beings are genetically programmed to be attracted to more than just one person. I think it is really unreasonable to expect any partner to not be attracted to another person, and to not be honest with the other partner when they are attracted to somebody else, like if they want to talk about it, but that's what monogamy is all about. It's all about, lying to the other partner. It's all about saying like, no, you're the most beautiful, oh no, don't worry about her, it's like, no,
this is her specific background, right? No, yeah. I found that very surprising about you, that you and your prior relationship with your ex-boyfriend.
Yeah, I want to get to it.
Right, but it was at that first. It was about refusing to admit that you were even attracted to other people. That was yeah. Because for some couples, the attraction doesn't matter; it's just whether or not you actually sleep with them. But right.
So yeah, with that being said, when I was young, like with the influences of going to church every Sunday, with the influences of having a mother who encouraged me to wait until marriage to have sex, I kind of thought like the idea of waiting till marriage was the pinnacle of morality, like some ideal that's somehow chastity, like chaste, that idea of like purity was kind of ingrained into my mind. So that definition of love relies on denying exactly what we want as human beings, which is connection, especially like intimate connections with the opposite sex. I mean, okay, there are exceptions. There are people who are not attracted to the opposite sex, but like, you know, on a primitive, like instinctual, even like telepathic basis, like sometimes it's just a look that like is transferred between people. You're denying that when you're in a strictly monogamous relationship. You're denying yourself that constantly, and it's in some ways it's kind of like a self-flagellation. Like if you are attracted to somebody else, you have to be like no and deny that and repress it. And it's all about repression, and just it's not healthy, right? But at the same time, that was what I was kind of programmed to think was right. So yeah, I mean, yeah. So right, like when you have a monogamous relationship, it's this monumental task of trying to remain happy and like convincing yourself that this is the only person that I could ever have like sexual relations with. Like this is the only person that I could actually be intimate with, and I have to somehow be happy with that, you know, for the rest of my life. You know, it's not like, you know, like it's not just for like 10 years or something. No, it's like forever. That is what the ideal is, in you know, Christian society. So, you know, keeping it all the way real, this was the situation I was when I met my first boyfriend when I was 17. I was with him for 6 years, and this included all of the years that I was in university. These are years which typically you can have new sexual experiences and you begin to form your sexual identity. And during that time, I only had sex with one person. And, you know, that person had a definition of love, and that was the only definition that I had been exposed to. Like I said, he was my first boyfriend, and he was like my only experience with love and my only experience with what it meant to be loving towards someone, and what it actually means to be a partner that, you know, every day your interactions with them, what does it actually feel like, and what is the experience that you have with them. So I didn't know it then, but, you know, his definition of love and what I was exposed to, and, you know, of course, 17, you're impressionable and you're vulnerable to somebody that loves you, and, you know, you're getting all this attention from somebody, and you just go along with what you're shown. At least I do. You know, that's my character. You know, it's just generally my character that I tend to, you know, at that time, that was my character. So, you know, that person's definition of love was very possessive. And I didn't realize it at the time, but, you know, it was very kind of jealous and emotionally manipulative, and in ways that I just wasn't able to recognize. And that was my only experience with love. So once I got involved with you,
I also just pause and say, you were very unhappy in that relationship. Yeah. I assume not immediately, like I assume not in the first month, but whatever. But soon enough, you really were unhappy in the relationship. And one of the main ways you responded to that was by medicating the condition. You know, you started smoking marijuana. Mm-hmm. Your ex-boyfriend smoked marijuana, and then it became every day smoking marijuana, which is a significant treatment. And then you also started on antidepressants, mm-hmm. right? So I just mentioned this is the most obvious mystery or riddle in Western civilization today. If you have a problem, do you want to actually solve the problem, or do you want to sedate yourself so that you tolerate the problem or ignore where you perpetuate the problem? But I mean, you were an example of someone doing that also.
Yeah,
and again,
played a role in our relationship too. I mean,
yeah,
like,
I think
fundamentally about that. You know,
I think
ourselves.
so. I think so. I mean, I think your boyfriend. I wouldn't even call him manipulative about that. That was kind of the deal. That was like the contract for the relationship he presented to you.
Yeah,
was that you needed to be on antidepressants and marijuana so that this relationship could continue.
So that I seemed happy. You know, right. that was how.
So that you seemed, or
made me
so that you
happy
tolerated a relationship that you were miserable in.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. No. So. Yeah, it was messed up, and I like didn't know it at the time, but it was really messed up. And you know, so getting back to just like the idea of jealousy, though, like, you know, in that relationship, it becomes increasingly clear after my having been with you, somebody who's not possessive, somebody who's not jealous,
right,
and somebody who doesn't want to be like controlling who I interact with, when I interact with, and asking all the time, like, you know.
Right,
you know,
right.
Because he was really, you know, made me feel guilty for even spending
Did
time
you even
with
talk
other
to that guy and
with other boys in university.
Right.
Like, you know, when that's a time when you're supposed to be like meeting new people, and just making new friends and stuff. Like it was hard for me to spend time with other boys that I liked. I mean, maybe not even like romantically, just that I wanted to spend time with. Right. So
I think though, let's just pause in 1 second, because the word possessive is a bit vague. Like, part of my attitude is I don't want to force someone to be in a relationship with me if they don't want to be. Like, it's, to me, like, sorry, it's really simple, but it's really obvious. Like, oh, you're not happy? Bitch, I don't need you. Like, oh, you met someone you like better than me? Go fuck up his shit instead of mine. Like, I'm happy. Like, good, But I mean, the reality is you're very much in love with me. You're very happy with me. And that's why you're with me. So why would I try to police you or control you or coerce you? And like vice versa, if the problem is that you're not motivated to be with me, you're not happy to be with me. Like, give a simple example. So we're both studying Chinese now. If she hates studying Chinese and she really doesn't want to be studying Chinese, like let's say she really wanted to study Greek or Italian or something. Okay, for one thing, probably in this relationship, I would probably be very supportive and loving in that case. But whatever it is, if there's something in the relationship, could be something as obvious as that you're miserable about, where you don't want to be with me, you want to be with someone else. To me, it's really a fundamental, like, logical error to think that my role is to kind of trap you and coerce you or try to keep you in the relationship, as opposed to addressing what it is that you're actually unhappy about, or just accepting, look, this girl doesn't like you, or she liked you for some reason before and doesn't like you now for whatever reason it is. Dealing with the reality of that rather than trying to kind of, restrict the person's behavior given what their choice would be.
Right.
So yeah, I just say that I think that's a very different attitude, which doesn't have to do with jealousy directly, but about possessiveness and possession and controlling someone, as opposed to
That's right.
As opposed to the deep assumption that if someone's in a relationship with you, it's because they chose you and they choose you every day and they want to be with you. They want to spend that time with you, and and really want it. I want to be with someone who's highly motivated. I don't want to be with someone who's dragging their feet, barely putting up with it. So yeah, and that's a contrast to your own early relationship. And look, guys, I'm not boasting about this. Remember, that's also why sometimes for a couple years in a row I'm alone. First couple years on this YouTube channel. I didn't have a girlfriend, but, again, I wasn't looking for someone who would just barely grudgingly put up with me or something. So, there are a lot of assumptions built into that.
Yeah, so those were during very formative years of my life that I was with him.
So that was
17 to 24.
Okay, so 17 to 24, right?
Yeah, I guess it was more 18 to 24. Yeah, so during those 6 years, that was what I was exposed to. That was what love was. And, the rules that we played by were, if he caught me or if he found out that I was cheating on him, he would dump me and never speak to me again. And he would... Two
birds with one stone.
He would... He would say this unprovoked, we weren't talking about it, but he would say, right. It would just destroy me. Like, if you were with anybody else, or if I found you with somebody else, and he'd say, basically
he did all the kind of hackneyed playbook, including threats of suicide and threats of violence and what have you.
From the very start too. Yeah. He was saying man, my life's I've got nothing in my life but you.
If you ever leave me, etc. Right?
Yeah,
this kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. And of course, that makes me feel like, wow, this guy really needs me. This guy really needs my love and attention. And I want, I genuinely feel like I do want to help people in life and stuff. So that definitely played into what I felt like was the right thing to do. And basically, looking back on it, he just wanted me all to himself. So, sorry, I don't like talking bad about past relationships, but it does play into all of this discussion about jealousy, because that was what I was shown was love, this possessive, you are mine, right. Keeping someone as we were talking about it the other day, keeping a moth in some kind of glass case to be looked at but don't touch. That was kind of how it was. So
but it has to be said too, some of the manipulative tactics she's complaining about with her ex-boyfriend and some that are spilling, you then tried to use on me when this relationship started.
Look,
and really extreme too, not sort of like screaming at me, weeping at me. Like these tactics were used like really in my face. So just mentioning, I think it's not the topic of this video, but it is true. Some of the same tactics your ex-boyfriend did to you did in the fullness of time try to use. I think I wasn't so easy to manipulate, but yeah, right. But you tried. Yeah.
No, you were not. No, from the very start, it was really jarring. Like, I gotta say, like, I love it now, but like, it was really jarring to be with somebody that was like, like I came home from China after the first time that I visited him, and he was like, you can still turn me in, you can still return me. Like, you said something like this in a video. You're like, well, if you don't want to be with me, like, it's cool. I was like, we just had this 2 weeks and we fell in love. Like, what the hell are you talking about? I could turn you in.
No. That's important though, because for me, like early in the relationship, so before we met, I said to her really clearly, look, if you're with me and you feel uncomfortable, there's this hotel nearby. Like you don't have to stay. You can go and check in this other. Yeah. So there was like no. But I felt that was really important to make it clear that it was her choice and stuff. Yeah. And not just that you're forgetting. I thought you weren't going to mention that. I thought what you were going to mention was when you went back to America, I also gave you the option. Look, you can wait and see me 6 months from now. Like you don't have to see me again, right? But you can take. You know what I mean? You can think it over and decide, and maybe I'm not such a big deal. I really reminded her of those options. Like, look, it's up to you. No, that was sincere. That was meant to. But no, but that was complete. I was like, oh yeah. And I remember saying to you at that time, I think you were shocked. You might not even remember. I said to you, look, you could date other guys. Like it's fine with me. Like but like if you stayed, like okay, look, if you want to stay in America, no, because I think that's something really important to say to someone. It's not. I'm not giving you some ultimatum. Like either you sell your soul to me or it's over. Or like either you commit with my demands or what. Like no, it's like look, this is a big step. Think it over. Don't rush into it. If you want more time or if you want to date other people, whatever, no, I felt that's what I felt was kind of the responsible thing to do.
Look, I love it. I love that attitude, and I think that's the right way to treat relationships. You should want to be with somebody just because you want to spend time together. Like that you like being with the person, and that's what's going to keep you together.
Right. Well, and if there's something deeper and more profound, that's great too. But keeping all the way real, of course. Right? I mean, it's both. It's self-confidence, but it's not reckless or ridiculous self-confidence. Like I knew, the sex was really good. I mean, there were a lot of things I knew. We were really sexually compatible. I knew there were a lot of things you liked about me, and whatever. Like it's not like I'm so meek and lacking in self-confidence. But the point is look, I'm self-confident. This is what I have to offer you. The good and the bad of it. But then on the other hand, if you don't want it, if you decide it's not for you, fine. That's good too. But you were in a type of medical program. She didn't want to continue with it. I'm not going to get into the details.
Educational program.
Studying. Medical. Right. Yeah. She was studying a medical topic at university, and she didn't really want to. But that was another thing. It was like, look, if you want to go continue that at university, like I respect that. You know what I mean? Like it's not. I would never say to you like, no, you have to drop out of school for me. Or And by the way, that's been done to me. I'm talking about past relationship. Anyway, I've been in the opposite situation where someone's saying to you, you have to drop out of your university program for me, this kind of thing.
Yeah. No, it does really suck. And like looking back on it, I'm like, oh my God, you're right. Like I did like repeat these things. And it's like, because that's what I thought what like a relationship was. And I remember it was toward the end of the first 2 weeks that we were together. We were walking in a grocery store buying groceries, and you made some comment like, basically it was the first time that you brought up us having an open relationship.
Right.
And my brain just like short circuited. Like I could not imagine that was the future for me, for Aizol and I was like, I don't need to get into the details, but like
it was a truly hilarious scene in the bulk department of that grocery store. The bins full of beans and rice and stuff. And
but no, I want to say like it was because you were like you've only been with two men, me and
right.
Your ex-boyfriend, like this is don't you have an interest in being with like any other person for the rest of your life? Right. I remember you said that we were going up the elevator.
This is right. So this is part of my perspective on it. I'm much older than Melissa. I'm 14 years older than her, and so she had only ever slept with two men, her ex-boyfriend and me. So again, I didn't know she was going to talk about this in the video, but so that's why I haven't mentioned it earlier. But it's great. Yeah. It's great. No, I think it's great to put it there. But part of my attitude was, look, if you say you're in love with me and you want to be with me for the rest of your life, then that really does mean necessarily that it should be an open relationship, because otherwise it would mean your whole life you'd only ever slept with two people, right? And that's not fair. That's not reasonable. By the way, I'm not saying everyone should sleep with 100 people or 1,000 people, but just one or two, this is a very low numeral. You know what I mean? It's like, so, that was part of my attitude then, and I think it's still part of my attitude now. And it's something I'd say to everyone in the audience. I mean, whether you have kind of an age gap or not, but especially if you're the older and more mature party, you should be able to look at the situation and say, look, this person just hasn't had that much experience. So if they're really in love with me, if they want to be with me forever, then it's not reasonable for me to say I should be the only person who's, And the other argument, by the way, the only other argument I think is in favor of it, of total monogamy, is laziness. I mean, it's great. It's a lot less work to only sleep with one person for the rest of your life. It really is.
You can become as fat as you want, or that was a thing, Like,
I guess with your first boy, yeah. I didn't think of that.
Over 100 pounds, and it was
So while he was with you, he gained over 100
when
pounds.
I expressed that, some dissatisfaction, it's.
He'd just freak out. He'd have a meltdown.
Oh yeah, no. And
okay.
So it's true. I mean, if you're in a monogamous relationship, and say,
some people,
this will be completely over if I catch you with anybody else. It's that.
Yeah. So then, within that framework, it justified him living a totally self-indulgent, lazy lifestyle. Otherwise, because he.
Yeah, and when I wanted expressed interest in going to the gym, I wanted to.
Right.
I wasn't even interested in gaining
right.
muscle at the time, but
just being healthy to whatever
just
extent.
losing weight. Yeah, he just shut down and couldn't handle it. He was like, no, why do you want to get me to the gym? So, so yeah.
Yeah.
I think that this is not that unusual. Sadly,
yeah.
maybe this particular situation is was more unhealthy than the average, but I think the typical definition of monogamy that is practiced in America, that is pretty typical. Okay, well, if you find your partner's cheating on somebody else,
right.
basically the relationship's over. The trust is
right
ruined, and that's that. And I think that's pretty typical. So I mean, I think it is important to say yes, it is lazy. But it's also if you don't want that, it is really a lot of agony. So I was thinking,
right.
I actually wrote this down. I was the agony of monogamy is that you're in a constant state of denying your basic instincts as, somebody, an animal that,
All right.
And so what I want to say is, from my personal experience, it's not even intentional. When I find myself attracted to somebody else.
Right.
And it's you can't, so.
It's an instinct like fear.
Yeah. Right. So it can happen, and just sometimes it surprises me if I'm
right.
walking on the street, it's unexpected.
Right.
You see somebody and you're like, wow, that person's, just it's
right.
not even a thought,
right.
like literally I can't even put words to it. It's just
right.
Something that happens when you're attracted to someone, and maybe not even how they look, but when you hear somebody talking,
yes.
how they express themselves, even how they write. I've been,
in real life, a good percentage of women are attracted to me when they hear my voice. Yeah, I know this very well, and you see the shift. You see the shift where some of the woman, she looks at you differently after she's heard your voice. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you freaked out over my handwriting. I remember that too. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
For whatever reason.
Oh, your handwriting is beautiful. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. Oh no, it's yeah.
I think she likes my handwriting in several languages too. But I would call it,
Yeah. But yeah, also even if you read even if you don't even know what somebody looks like, sometimes if you read what they write.
Yes, that's happened to me a few times.
You're like, wow, this person is really wonderful and really amazing. You get this kind of.
Yep. Yep.
So if I spend some time with someone else, in this relationship, you and me, if I spend time with someone else and we hit it off or whatever, if we decide to move towards something more intimate, okay, will we even have good sex? You don't know.
Yes.
Will you remain good friends? Will you even remain
right.
wanting to talk to, will you even have a relationship after
will the
that?
friendship last or something?
You don't know, right?
Right. And to use a phrase I used on the YouTube channel a long time ago, get disappointed, get your heart broken, get up, get your heart broken again. That resolution. Yeah. There's but it's a lot less heartbreaking if you have a stable relationship with your primary partner when you're meeting new people. But
right.
Yeah, but this is a fundamental part.
So that was kind of the situation I was in, when I was in college, there were people that I liked spending time with that I probably would have wanted to engage in something more intimate. But because I was in this other relationship, I couldn't, and I have a lot of regrets about that I wasn't able to pursue that I wasn't able to have those connections. And like,
and these other people in college were more intellectually stimulating than your boyfriend also.
Yeah.
Not to hate on him, but yeah.
He didn't graduate from university, and like, he wasn't reading books. He wasn't, so, that would have meant, if I would have done that, it would have severed this relationship, that of course I'd grown attached, and this was the source of, love and source of attention. And, of course, everyone has selfish needs, selfish desires, like for attention. And that's where I was getting at. So, so what I wrote isn't the more mature, reasonable stance, to be understanding and allow your partner to seek out these other experiences if they are possible.
So I have to jump in.
Yeah.
Remember, so when we got together, Melissa's 24 years old. Mm-hmm. She's now 27, all right? Yeah. I have a friend who we're not going to name. I have a female friend who we're not going to name who started discovering this stuff after she was already married with 2 kids, all right? And it's different. I mean, and again, I'm divorced or separated and still legally in divorce quagmire. I still have legal paperwork to do with my ex-wife. She'll go on for another 2 or 3 years at least, we predict. Going on forever. But nevertheless, that's not something I can say universally. If you're 55 years old with grandkids, I think it's different. No, I really do. I mean, you have to be honest with yourself and everyone else. So Melissa was 24. She's now 27, and we have no kids. It's different. And I got sympathy for the other people. I do. That friend of mine who was already married with 2 kids, and one of the breaking points for her was that, her husband, the guy she'd married, he was apparently just incapable of giving her an orgasm. I don't know. I mean, when people talk to me this stuff, I don't pry. I don't know if that meant she'd absolutely never had one or like one every couple months or something. But, the sex was really bad. And she really hit a breaking point. She was like, no, I can't stick with this marriage. I can't be monogamous anymore. And, she went on to try other things. So I know different stories from different people's perspectives, and they have different consequences. So this isn't something that's universal or easily said to all people in all situations. And yeah, there are people who reconsider, too late. And that, I just say that's a very sad, very different story. But obviously, again, if I had been a complete asshole, that, then you could have been one of the people who figures out too late. You know what I mean? Like, you could have been one of the people who looks back and starts reconsidering these basic assumptions that you had from your childhood and your teenage years when you were 55 or when you had 2 kids or whatever it is. So it's a footnote, but really it's a pretty crucial footnote here. Yeah.
It is.
And by the way, I'm self-critical that way too. I'm above 40. I'm more than 40 years old now. I think the situation applies to me differently too, and obviously I was in an open relationship before this one. Basically all the major relationships in my life were open relationships. Any of them that lasted long enough for what I want to say, but for sure. That's all. Age and other responsibilities, those things really delimit how you can apply this advice in your life.
Yeah. And there's also undertones about like, the number of sexual partners, like that it makes you a slut if you've had a certain number, and that definitely got into my mind when I was younger.
Right. I remember the earlier conversations with that, but because even if you accept that, like if there's some number, is it 5? Like, that's the thing. I know. But like, my point is, like, even if you're talking about that with people who really do feel that way, like, okay, you know what if 1,000 is too much? Okay, so maybe 1,000, how about 500? Okay, but how about 50? But how about 5? Even if you do have that idea, and I think, again, I've met some men who had enormous numbers of sexual partners, and I think it can screw up your life. I think when you're talking about more than 500 or something, maybe there are some questions to get asked here, but again, I actually don't think it's an infinitely flexible ruler, but then you're challenged with a much more interesting question, which is, okay, but why is the number 1? Because that's really fucked up. one doesn't work, right? Then as soon as you're willing to question the number one, then you're going to question the number two, and you're going to question number three, and the number four. So that's all. Again, I'm saying this probably because I know.
Especially, it's not about quantity; it's like quality. You know, like what if you have a
meaningfulness,
like one, like you said, like one relationship where it can't be monogamous anymore because it's such a terrible experience for the person. I mean, that's awful.
Well, right, and you can have a relationship that's totally dissatisfactory sexually. But you can also have a relationship that's dissatisfactory intellectually.
Right.
And you can have both. It could be double disappointing. But again, I don't think there's any argument that a basically healthy human being should only have one or two sexual partners in their life. If you feel 50 is too many, stop at 10, stop at whatever. I mean, it's up to you. It's totally fine. Sexual liberation, sexual freedom doesn't mean you're under a compulsion to have sex with 1,000 people. That's also ridiculous, but that's really a kind of straw man argument. So I just say, I think there's actually a moderate response to that. And as you know, a lot of people on the left wing instead want to say like, oh, sex has absolutely no stigma. Well, no, there is stigma. I mean, there is stigma. We've made other videos talking about this because you're judged by your personal conduct, and who you sleep with reflects on you and who you are, and the meaningfulness of your relationships does. No, I mean, if you literally slept with every single person in your high school, there's a reason why that has a stigma. If you slept with every single person in your class, there's a reason why that does. But still, even if you concede that point, then there's still this meaningful challenge of how to live and how to have a reasonable number of partners or relationships or experiences.
I know I've already said this in this video, but like it really is fundamentally about like denying your desire to have intimate relationships with somebody else. So like I just think so much of our lives are meaningless, just drudgery. So few positive experiences, so much suffering. Like so little joy that can be had in one day, and sex doesn't take that long. I mean, like it's it's an enjoyable experience, and I'm not it's a measured thing, and I'm not trying to say like you said. I mean, don't sleep with everybody in your high school or something like that.
Right.
But why fundamentally like deny yourself that and like I said, it's kind of like just denying yourself the enjoyment that you could be having if you weren't with somebody who was preventing you from pursuing that if you wanted to.
Well, look, I talked about this a million years ago on the channel, but I should make a new video because I haven't now talked about it for several years. But the other thing is, I personally don't think that intellectual relationships and sexual relationships are really two separate things.
No, they don't have to be.
Well, no, but I mean, I think,
and they should be.
Right, but I mean,
like.
Right.
Combined.
Right, but my point is, even if you sleep with someone who's quite stupid, still you're going to be sharing your life with and sharing your thoughts with and sharing your feelings with that person. There's going to be some kind of intellectual exchange.
Yeah.
And just to mention, someone who might not be conventionally brilliant, they may have experiences in life, they may have a perspective in life, they may really have things they share with you that are meaningful to you also.
Right.
So, I just say it's not like everyone has to be a research scientist. But I don't think those things are separable. I would actually go so far as to say I think the belief that sex can be just and only sex is itself a fantasy. Mm-hmm. And people act out that fantasy. People pay money to act out that fantasy.
Right.
But like you can't really separate sex from the reproductive urges and the social urges and the intellectual and emotional side of life. You can try. But I say don't try, just admit to yourself that these are meaningful relationships with other people. And so real quick, a better example than sleeping with everyone in your high school. So back when I was much younger and much more handsome, I used to work at a Starbucks. At least 3 of my female coworkers wanted to sleep with me. Maybe 4. We could ask her. We asked the 4th one. So, now, and I refused all of them. Now, if I'd slept with all 4, that would have been pretty fucked up. My daily life at work would have been pretty screwed up. And, obviously, if I'd slept with them just once, and I would have been hated, and I would have been regarded as a bad person. Let's just be real here. My situation at work, would be like if you slept, it's ridiculous to say you slept with everyone in your high school or something. But, I know I would have been perceived really negatively. On the other hand, of course, like you just said, I can look back now. I mean, some of those girls, some of them came from a really hard knock life. I mean, I remember one of them was a high school dropout, so again, not a lot of conventional book learning, had a tough life, beautiful, gorgeous young woman, by the way. But, she came out of a really, I'm sorry, I don't want to say anything about her. She came out of a really interesting background. Now looking back, it's like, wow, that would have been someone really meaningful for me to get to know better, even though, I was all about book learning and she wasn't at all, knowing different stuff about her and things. So, I just say, it's easy for me in my 40s to look back and see that there was really a positive opportunity there for something other than just sex. But then, sure, on the other hand, there's the danger that you're perceived as a bad person, or indeed that you actually become a bad person. If you're actually lying to and manipulating, like all 4 of your female coworkers or something, sure, it'll have a corrosive effect on your work life and maybe on your character too. Sure.
Yeah. But what, as a human being, like in lieu of this conversation about like this is the one life you have, there's no afterlife.
Right.
Like, the wonderful thing about life is that you get to have learning experiences and you get to have you get to know people on a level that you can
Yes.
Right. That's one of the best things about life, like like actually having connections with people and getting to know them and really like having a long lasting relationship where you keep up with each other, like what are you doing in your life, it's so valuable and so meaningful.
And also, even some of those girls I used to work with at Starbucks, I kind of do wish I knew again, and what they went on to in their life after that.
Yeah.
But the fucked up thing is, I don't think any of them would have been friends with me if I didn't sleep with them. That's also one of the ironies in life is, there was no possibility there of being, for whatever, they're shallow, who knows why, for whatever reason. Yeah.
And something else, sorry, this is going on. Yeah. But something else that came up in conversation the other day, and what you were just saying earlier, you were saying that like people have this fantasy that sex can be just sex. Whereas like I think it's the popularity of drugs and alcohol in club culture is really about trying to separate sex from meaningful relationships. Yeah. And it's really hard to forget even a face. You've mentioned to me that like you might you remember the faces that you've seen just like of women that you saw on the street.
Women who flirted with me or something. Women who had some brief interaction
that you found like somehow like very beautiful, and I can relate. Like I remember like just certain people that I've seen and not even talked to or like barely had interactions with, just because it was that connection that like something in the eyes that happens when you see somebody. The popularity of drugs and alcohol is to try to like forget that connection, or maybe even like with having sexual interactions with somebody.
Turn
else.
Yourself into an automaton through,
But
take away the sense of personal responsibility and depth and what have you. To reduce sex to just sex, right?
Right, but it can be something valuable. It can be something wonderful that can come out of it, even if it's not like a long-term thing. It could just be something like interesting and a fun, like just.
Again, this is reminding me of stuff I should make a new video on, because I said this like 4 years ago or something. But again, compare it to skiing. Like, even if it's not that profound or that meaningful, these kinds of relationships, they're going to be way more meaningful than going skiing, going on a downhill skiing vacation. Yeah. So I agree. And of course, there's the possibility, you let someone into your life, you get involved with them, and it's whatever. They're stupider than you thought they were going to be, or they were bad in bed, or both, or whatever. Sure. Still more meaningful than skiing. Still, in my opinion.
Oh yeah. And then you've learned and gone through that experience.
I used to get email from people saying, "Why do you hate downhill skiing?" Anyway,
I mean, then you'd actually know what you're missing out on if you.
Look, I just say, I mean, honestly, if I had a love affair with a woman who ran a pancake restaurant or something, like, I'm really not saying like the only meaningful experiences to share are being a research scientist or getting a PhD or something. People also, they bring to you, their things they've learned, from whatever it is they've done in life.
That's right. Yeah. So getting back on this topic of like. Jealousy and how it affected my relationships. Like, when I was thinking about this, people leave their partners all the time, even if they aren't even cheating on their spouses. Like, it doesn't have to be something like sexual in nature that like causes people to split up. And true love is really not like trying to keep somebody as a pet, trying to keep them as like your plaything, like your toy, right? True love is not trying to capture a moth and, put it in a case, a glass case for people to look at. Yeah. That's just, to me, not what love should be. But that's very different than the definition of love that I was shown. So, when I'm thinking about this, what is the cure for jealousy? Part of the simple answer is love, actually being loving towards someone, actually like caring about the other person and wanting what's best for the other person, and not trying to forgetting the selfish desires of yourself, the selfish desires that you have, and actually wanting good things for the partner, and actually genuinely being happy for your partner, and wanting them to have have experiences that they want to have, meaningful experiences in their life. So that's what I was struggling with for so long. I think it really had to do with selfishness, self-indulgence, and my own feelings of, agonizing about this not being able to get over this idea of you maybe finding joy in somebody else. And it was really about like wanting you all to myself, like I love your attention. It's like the best thing in the world, spending time with you. Really, to me, like you're such a joy to be around. I know, like, I mean, of course, everybody has ups and downs, right. Like everybody has their moods, and
but not me.
But like you are very like fun to be around, and it's kind of not what I expected when from seeing your YouTube videos, but like you are really fun to be around, and like little things that you do are just mean everything to me, and I love spending time with you. So it was hard for me to be like I want you all to myself, right. And that's not really what love is. That's really just like my selfish desires for wanting you all to myself. So like that's what I think was really the problem. And me being separated from you for these 6 months, where I've only gotten to see you for a short amount of time, it's made me reflect on that and see that that's
we're spending a solid month together right now. But
it's wonderful.
So to say, it wasn't really 6 months continuously being
But even the other day, I started feeling like real weepy. I was like, I'm going to leave you in a couple days, and like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to see you for I don't know how long. And, it was really just selfish of me. It was like, I'm going to be alone and like all sad and stuff. But it's like, you don't, if you actually, like yourself, if you actually like spending time with yourself, if you it's okay to be alone. Like it's actually, it can be fun to be alone. If you have meaningful things in your life, if you study, if you if you just have like working out is also like it's something that you can do.
Solitary activity.
When you're alone, or like going for walks and stuff. There are nice things about being alone, but it was my first real period of being alone, I guess, to be honest. Like, I mean, because I was in this relationship when I was like 18 to 24, and in that relationship I was hardly ever alone. At least there was always at least a stream of text messages saying oh, I miss you, I love you, baby, like all this stuff. So actually being alone and realizing like you have to be okay with yourself, you have to respect yourself and love being around yourself, and then that's how you can be a good partner to somebody, is not wanting to like keep them all to yourself, or like rely on them for like and for your entertainment, or like your intellectual stimulation. I mean, that's a wonderful thing about you. You're always like talking about so many different topics, and it's very intellectually stimulating. But you got to be able to do that for yourself. And I love that I've been with you, and I love that I've had the experiences with you that I've had, because I really feel like you've taught me how to love, and you've taught me what love is in ways that I never could have known had I not been with you. So it's really meaningful.
Weeping on camera.
That I get to talk about this. And then I get to talk about it after having, seen that sad video where I was so like, lost in despair, and like, oh, it'll never be enough, like, all this time with you. And because, you can't depend on somebody else for your own, just self-reliance, I don't know.
Your equanimity, maybe? Throw on a word?
Yeah, I guess, I just, the other day when I was getting all weepy about it, it was like, oh God, I got lost in this pit of despair and depression when we got separated the last time, and like, it's just fraught with all kinds of difficulties. So, so I think I said this to you the other day, but I really mean it. Isel, in response to that video where I said, like, oh, I don't want you to leave me, like, oh, you're gonna find somebody else. Like, no, I really genuinely feel this. Like, if you decide to leave me, like, I will want happiness for you, because I really love you, and I really just want you to have a meaningful life and have a good experience in your life. And that's what I would want from you. I wouldn't want you to turn around and be like, no, I
want revenge or something. It makes no sense, right?
If I decided to leave you, I would want you to be happy for me and keep in touch with me and actually care for me. And that to me is what true love is. Like, deciding that what you have is durable enough, the connection that you have is strong enough, and meaningful enough that you're not gonna leave each other if you've got sexual attraction to somebody else. It's just so it's so shallow, and it causes so much agony, so much hardship in monogamous relationships, and and it doesn't work. You said the other day, like, monogamy has been proven to just not work. Like, so many marriages end in failure, and but people are cheating on their husbands all the time. Or
even if you just read the history of Western civilization, not to mention Chinese civilization, all these historical figures in reality had open relationships. Napoleon Bonaparte and Josephine both, Napoleon and his wife, they both had open relationships. They didn't use the term open relationship. Just saying, historically, it's also saying that monogamy in practice was not what people say it is. If you actually read the Old Testament, which very few Christians do, there are descriptions there of marriages in which the man is sleeping with the servant and the man is sleeping with prostitutes and so on, and all this is countenanced as normal. And King David has innumerable wives and consorts and so on. So, the actual basis for monogamy, even in the Bible, let alone, I just say, when you look at the brutal reality of what monogamy was in practice. And let me tell you something, guys, without getting into it. China was off the hook. So, the concept of monogamy in Chinese civilization is,
so when you operate by that definition of love, where you're actually really happy for the other person and you want happiness for them, even if it's not with you, like, even if you're not keeping them as your pet, or like, that you want them constantly all to yourself or something like that. And once that happens, like, once you start thinking about it in that way, I just feel like jealousy isn't there. Like, you're not going to feel jealous of other people because there's nothing that, like, if your bond is that strong, if you really care about each other that much, like, who's going to make me jealous? I just don't feel it anymore. I don't, I just don't think that that's going to happen, and also, like, once you get secure in yourself and yourself, like, what you have to work on, and you're honest with yourself, when you're not lying to yourself about the issues that you have, and when you realize that you can work on them and you can learn from your past mistakes and improve, like, you won't be jealous of other people, or, like, when you just feel comfortable in yourself in ways that that you can expand on. And, like, I mentioned this in the video that we recorded a couple weeks ago, when you're focusing on intellectual pursuits, or, like, things like relationships in your life, if you have children,
anything meaningful, right?
Anything meaningful, like your job, like, even if you're, like, working on, like, doing something meaningful in your career, why would you be jealous of that if you're really trying your best, and if you're really honest with yourself, and you aren't lying to yourself, you aren't lying to other people? It's just, it's just not going to be there. So that's ultimately what has been my experience. Okay, so this is, what I've come to, like, that's the cure for jealousy is all that gets wrapped up.
So the cure for jealousy is having a meaningful life. I mean, that's kind of interesting.
So I wrote, so the cure to jealousy in a relationship, number 1, have a meaningful, long-lasting, stable, durable, mutually respectful relationship that can stand the test of time, that you feel confident is going to stick. You're going to stick around with each other for reasons other than possession or manipulation. Number 2, realize that love isn't about being possessive or keeping somebody as your toy, your pet. And also, number 3, being genuinely happy for your partner. Just really wanting the best for them and being happy for them. Also honesty. So yeah, I said
Yeah.
number 4, honesty is really crucial in relationships. Being honest with each other,
Right.
and being honest with yourself about how you're behaving.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, look, we watched a video some time ago where the woman was giving advice on acne, but she admitted towards the end of the video she'd never had acne herself. She said something like in her whole life she'd only had 2 or 3 pimples or something. She really didn't have any direct experience of this. Okay, interesting, but very different from the advice you're going to get from someone who's an insider, someone who's struggled with acne, someone who's struggled with skin problems. And, likewise, I think on this channel it's very rare, but I've been giving an outsider's perspective on jealousy. Jealousy is not my problem; it never has been, and I really think on a cognitive level, I don't experience it. So yeah, over the past 2.5 years. Like I said at the start of this video, I mean, opposites attract. Somehow I ended up with one of the most jealous people. Jealous and controlling. And no. And I mean, I think you were doing all those coercive things where it's like, I'm going to force you to love me on my terms. And you were really doing that stuff.
I agree.
I was very resilient, but,
But maybe, not to like glorify you, but like, maybe it is because of your commitment to the truth and and being honest and being real. That's what's always attracted me to you, is that you're like really honest and you're devoted to like not lying to yourself. So like part of it might be...
Stop. So on that issue exactly.
Yeah.
What are you more afraid of? I'm asking the audience here. What are you more afraid of? Being alone or being in a relationship with someone who doesn't love you but who's being forced to pretend? That's a wrap.